Hi there, friends. It's me, Ryan, again, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to a new year. To kick off this year, I wanted to do something kind of relaxing and creative and bring all of you along for a little bit of a paint with me session where I will give a little bit of a tutorial, believe it or not, and instruct all of you along on a simple painting that you can create along with me at home or simply watch and enjoy while you're having a relaxing evening or afternoon, and we can have a creative and relaxing time together. A bit inspired by the great Bob Ross and the idea of being a paint and sip instructor, which is something I've always really wanted to do. So I thought I'd bring that energy to the channel. For the new year, I'd bring all of you along for a relaxing and creative painting session with me. So I will go ahead and set up my painting area, and then we can begin our painting journey together. Alright, now I think we have our painting setup properly taken care of, and we can begin the painting process. Now, as you can see, this is a little bit of an older canvas. This was an old canvas I bought to give to a friend of mine that I can no longer speak to, unfortunately. Not because he's dead. There is a little bit of demarcation on the middle, but don't worry, even if your canvas isn't in perfect shape, it will be easy enough for us to cover this up and fix it without having to take too much effort or stressing about any imperfections. When you look at a blank canvas, it can be very difficult to decide what you want to do with it, and I think sometimes doing a sketch can help you get a rough idea of what you want the outcome to look like. However, for today's practice, we're not going to bother with the extra details of making a sketch, and instead we're going to go right in and start painting our background. So I'm going to take a large brush like this, make sure that it's clean and a bit damp. I don't want the brush to be too stiff, nor do I want it to be too wet. With that being said, I'm going to jump right into starting with the background. Now I'm going to start with a product known as gesso, and what gesso essentially is a thick white paint that allows you to have a smoother textured surface to paint on, especially when you're working with canvas. Now this is certainly not necessary, and it's absolutely possible to do this with some white paint, but I have this on hand and I've had it for years, so I think I'll write. Let's see here. Place some down on my palette, and just enough of a layer to coat the canvas and make it a bit more white, remove just a little bit of the texture. Even just laying down some of the gesso has greatly decreased the effect of that demarcation line, and that is another excellent trick for removing the imperfections on your canvas without having to make it a stressful process. But when I'm doing a layer like gesso that's something for the background, I like to make sure my brush goes in almost every direction with the strokes to ensure that they are fairly seamless and you do not see much texture, since that's what we were trying to cover up in the first place. And now that I've gessoed the canvas, I'll let it dry down just a little bit before we start working on the next part of the painting. But for now, we'll let it dry for just a little bit of time. Alright, now that the gesso is nice and dry, we've got a nice white layer to start with. I'm going to go ahead and start working on our background. I want to work a subject matter I'm comfortable with, and something that I think I can help you easily learn to paint. So what I'm going to start with, I want to work within a simple color scheme with tone ranges, but keeping within a simple color range so that you can easily do this at home. And I know even though I've set out a lot of colors that might look intimidating, but I promise we won't use too many of them here, just to ease our way into this painting process together. So the first thing I'm going to do is start with a nice mix of a crimson red and white, and just blend them out into the canvas. And this will just be serving as a background color, so there's no need to be exact or precise. As long as you get a good amount of coverage, it will work perfectly for the painting as we move forward. I want the intensity of the sky to get darker as we go up, so I'm going to add more red onto the canvas directly here, and mix in just a little bit of black. Now, a little can go a long way with this color, so be careful and be gentle when using this. Just dab off some of the black from my brush, wet the brush a little to decrease the intensity here. I like the juxtaposition of the really cool black with the rich red tones for a sort of sky. It's a sort of sunset or dusk, perhaps. You will have some brush strokes and nothing, and your blending won't be able to be completely hidden, and that's okay. It's a painting, and I think that there's some charm and some magic in letting it look a bit painterly, if you will. And then I just want to go back and forth with my brush like this, just to make it look like a sky all the way across. And I'm going to take my brush that's already loaded with color and just add some white into it and start to do these dabbing motions. And what this dabbing and back and forth will do is it will start to give me a sort of foggy or cloudy effect in the sky. The nice thing about clouds is you'll achieve what you want with a cloud more effectively if you are less exact in your brush strokes. I'm going to add some redder clouds here. I think that will look nice. Just adding a bit more red onto my palette. Now that I've got a little bit more red on my palette, I think we can do some really vibrant. No, I am certainly no expert at landscape painting, and I find it is a lot easier for me to teach you something I am more familiar with, which is a little bit less realism and a little more fantasticism, if you will. So, we'll make the painting a little more fantastical. You can see a combination of effects is really the best for achieving a cloudy, misty sort of look. And now with the mixes of reds and whites and blacks, we've got a nice misty, cloudy looking sky. And I want to begin on a bit of water just below. So I'm going to take just the red by itself at first and sort of denote where I want the horizon line to be. Perhaps where some water will meet the sky. And I'll mix a bit of black into this to give it a much more intense color just below the edge, so the edge sort of glows red. I do want to keep this fairly simple in case you do wish to follow along, so I won't be using too many brushes, but I do want to switch to something just a little smaller so that I can be a little more precise in creating a red circle just towards the top of the sky. Which we will use for our moon. Nice. That'll just be a base layer, and we'll go ahead and let that dry down before we continue working on it. So I'll put that brush in the water to let it sit, and now we're going to take a little bit of a break and allow this to dry just for a few minutes one more time, so all of this can set in a little bit more and allow us to paint on top of it without disturbing what we've already worked on. And then when I come back, we'll start finishing up the rest of the background and add some details and get on with our painting. Hello, and welcome back. Before the break, we had just added a red circle to the sky to serve as a backdrop for the moon, and we took a little time to let everything dry and come together so that now when we add more layers of paint on top, it will be a lot easier for the colors to lay on, rather than all blend. Rich opacity and color. I've also added a second camera so I can give you a little bit of a fuller tutorial in case you are following along at home and you want a better idea of how some of the details are coming together, and so we move into the smaller and finer parts of the painting. So with that being said, let's get back to work. First things first though, I want to finish the moon so that I don't have to continue in the sky too much, and so what I'll do is fill in the moon with black. Perhaps the sun is reflecting off the opposite side of the moon, perhaps it's a particularly dark night. Up to your interpretation, but I find that this is a much more soothing option. I will add a little spot of red just because it is a round object. It always looks a little more dimensional. It's not just a floating black orb. So just a spot of red here, just a spot of red here to give it a little dimension. And now I'm going to take our third and final brush of the session and really focus on these water details. And it's a bit of a back and forth motion, just drawing little lines, picking up the brush, stopping, coming back. And I want the red water lines to go a bit diagonally from left to right, where the moon's position is in the sky compared to the water, so that the light is shining a bit like this. And now, in contrast, I'm going to add quite a bit of black to a little more red. And do some more water lights just around the edge. And because this painting isn't meant to be too realistic, you can really go for as long or as little as you want with this part. So, have fun with it and don't take it too seriously, just So now I think we've got most of the background pieces done, and what I want to start doing is painting in a little bit of landscape in the front. And to do that, we're just going to need some black. Start painting in what will be the landscape in the front. I want it to look like mountains, or perhaps craggy cliffs, so harder lines are best. If you have a palette knife, this would be an excellent time to use it. As I do not, I will try my best to mimic the harder lines and shapes with my brush. So I'm going to take our medium-sized brush and start sketching out a more craggy, rocky sort of texture for the edges. For now, I'm happy with the shape. I think it looks like a nice cliff's edge, and we can continue to move forward with the painting. Now, there are many different ways to paint trees. I know Bob Ross has a fantastic method using a fan brush, but those are a bit more of a piney style of tree, and I want to achieve something a little bit more ancient and perhaps oaky. So I'm going to use a different technique that will allow us to use our same three brushes without having to change again. So now with our medium-sized brush, I'm going to take just some black paint and start to make very scratchy shapes. And I love this style of trees that are more gnarled and older. But what I also think is quite nice about them is for a painting like this, where I want it to be simpler for you to follow along, I actually think they're quite easy to work with. If you don't have to worry about leaves or any sort of foliage, you can just focus on making fun little stick shapes wherever you want, as many as you think look good. And even if they're very random or you feel unsure of what you've done, by the end you will probably have a pretty darn good looking tree. So there's our first tree done. As you can see, with just 2 brushes, you can easily achieve a believable tree shape without having to be too detailed or specific. And now we'll work on the second tree, and then we'll move forward towards the foreground of the painting. Now that the trees that are furthest in the back are completed, I want to go ahead and finish off the bottom of the waterline and then move on to the rest of the foreground. So I'm going to take the same small brush we've already been using and just go in and paint grass. Loosely, not every individual blade, but so now what I want to do is take our medium-sized brush, and I want to add some larger trees that look a bit closer to us in the foreground to really round this out and make it feel more cozy and intimate, a bit more like we're enclosed in a space. So again, I'm going to start with the medium-sized brush and really mark out where I want the largest branches to be. And then I'll go back in with the smaller brush again and fill in some of the smaller pieces of the tree. And there you have it, friends. With just a couple brushes and a couple simple techniques and really only 3 or 4 colors, you can achieve a very serene and relaxing nature painting. And I thank you all for coming with me on this journey, and I hope you all had a wonderful time painting with me. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the rest of the content I put out this year. And enjoy yourselves in everything you do, and thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you all again soon, and take very good care of yourselves.